Hi, Sylvia. All right. Well, again, good evening, everyone, and welcome. Appreciate you being here to learn more about how to be a volunteer lobbyist. My name is Sandy Barr, and I'm the chapter director for Sierra Club's Grand Canyon chapter, which is the Arizona chapter. And just a quick bit about me. I use she, her pronouns. I live in Central Phoenix on Akamal Atom and Kipash lands. And I grew up in Northern Michigan. Those are traditional Ottawa lands. I have been here most of my life because I love the Sonoran Desert, and I've worked for Sierra Club for about 25 years. Will be 26 in January. Actually, my anniversary is right around the time of Environmental Day this year. And there's a lot of different types of work that I do for Sierra Club and have done, and I enjoy it all, especially though working with people and helping people connect and learn about how to use their voice in support of environmental protection. And in the Sierra Club, we center our work on principles of equity, justice, and inclusion, including on the HEMES principles for democratic organizing, being inclusive, letting people speak for themselves, working together, building just relationships, and committing to self-transformation. So here is generally what I am going to cover this evening. I'll give a quick overview of Arizona state government and the Corporation Commission, and then we'll take the deeper dive into the legislature, the powers and leadership, how a bill becomes a law, talk about volunteer lobbying, the do's and don'ts, give you some resources, how you can use the request to speak system, a little bit about Environmental Day at the Capitol, and then I don't really have much of a legislative update yet because they haven't started the session yet, but I'll just tell you a little bit about what we expect. And then, of course, your questions. So let's get started with a bit of an overview on Arizona government. Here in Arizona, we actually have 4 branches of government. Of course, the usual, the executive, legislative, and judicial branches. But we also have the Corporation Commission, which is a 4th branch of government. It's constitutionally created. And so it is, you know, basically a separate branch of government. The executive branch is made up of the governor, the secretary of state, the state treasurer, attorney general, and superintendent of public instruction. So here in the middle, we have Governor Katie Hobbs. Over here is Attorney General Chris Mays, Secretary of State Adrian Fonches, Superintendent of Public Instruction Tom Horn, and State Treasurer Kimberly Yee. The governor has a lot of responsibilities and powers, approves and vetoes bills, and our governor does have a line item veto ability in the budget, so can take out specific items. They start any kind of special session for the legislature, can call them into special session. They deliver the State of the State address that is on the first day of the legislative session. The governor oversees the state agencies, appoints directors, many of which are subject to confirmation by the Senate, and also appoints individuals to boards and commissions. And I wanted to call your attention to this one because there are a lot of vacancies on boards and commissions right now and opportunities to serve. And I'll go ahead and send out the link where you can find those, but it's, really important to have people who care, whether it's, game and fish or state parks board or many other boards. It's important to have people who care about the issues and are willing to serve. So hopefully some folks will take a look at that. And also fills vacancies. So if there isn't a specific provision in the Constitution for how a vacancy is filled, then the governor fills it. So for example, if someone resigns or is removed from the Corporation Commission, the governor appoints that person. And speaking of the Corporation Commission, this is the commission. There are 5 elected commissioners right now. There are 4 Republicans and 1 Democrat. Nick Myers, Kevin Thompson, Leah Marquez Peterson, and Jim O'Connor, who's the chair. They're Republicans, and then Ana Tovar is the 1 Democrat. They're elected every 4 years, and they they're not all elected at once. 3 are elected 1 cycle and 2 the next. And for 2024, there are 3 seats up. They are term limited. And it's kind of unusual to have a corporation commission that is established in the Constitution. Only 7 states have constitutional commissions. A lot of states, you'll hear these referred to as the Public Utilities Commission. And I mention that because I think a lot of people just don't know what the Corporation Commission is, and so sometimes don't bother to cast a vote for this office, but it's really pretty important. And yeah, they're responsible for regulating public utilities, small private water companies, and corporation of businesses. They regulate securities, and they have railroad and pipeline safety under their purview. All right, let's move along to the legislature. So right now we're in the 56th Arizona Legislature. And we, as we have for a long time, have 30 legislative districts. There's been talk about having more, but that's where we're at right now. It's a bicameral legislature with a Senate and a House of Representatives. And the partisan split in our legislature is very close. There are 60 reps, and 31 of those representatives are Republicans, and there are 29 Democrats. And then in the Senate, there are 30 senators and 16 Republicans and 14 Democrats. So effectively, a 1 person split, because if it flipped by 1 person, it would be dead even in both houses. And that has happened before in the Senate, and the Democrats and Republicans had to figure out how to work together to move along the process, and mostly did. All right. So let's talk a little bit about the leadership in the legislature. The Speaker of the House is Ben Toma. Ben Toma is from Peoria. He is a real estate developer. And this is his, this going into, or in 2024, that will be his 2nd year as Speaker. This is his 1st term as Speaker, and maybe his only one, because he's planning on running for Congress. And then the Senate President is Warren Peterson, and he's from Gilbert, and he is also in the real estate business. So, and this is his 1st term as Senate President as well. The Senate President and the Speaker have a lot of power, actually, and I mentioned that there's like a 1-vote margin, but the majority controls everything, and they decide, they have the speaker and the Senate president, so they control a lot of what happens at the legislature. They control the chambers, they sign all bills and any acts, they appoint and remove committee chairs and members. There was a committee member just removed from a committee in the House as kind of a retribution move that the Speaker of the House did. They decide which bills will be heard, if they'll be heard at all, and when. And they also decide on all employment and personnel issues, including for the minority, although generally speaking, they defer to them. Ultimately, they can decide to fire someone, and that has happened before as well. And then the minority leadership is Lupe Contreras from Phoenix. He is in District 22, and he has a criminal justice and law background. And then the minority leader in the Senate is Mitzi Epstein. She is a full-time legislator, but her background is as a computer systems analyst. So they have a lot less power than the majority, the Senate president and the House Speaker. But probably their greatest power or in this process is keeping their caucus together. If they can keep their caucus together to vote as a bloc, then a lot of times that can help stop, certain bills from moving forward, and will mean that actually the majority has to talk to them if they want to get something through. So that's usually where their power comes from. Also, knowing the rules, sometimes people don't follow the rules that the House or Senate has adopted. And so just knowing those and calling things into question can be helpful too. I wanted to, before we get into how a bill becomes a law, I wanted to mention citizen initiatives and referenda, because they're really an important part of our Constitution and an important part of how laws, constitutional amendments are made. A lot of states don't have these provisions in their Constitution, but in Arizona, we do have opportunity for direct democracy. It's something that the legislature generally doesn't like, because it is designed to be a check on the legislative power. So if the legislature passes a bill that people don't like, they can actually, after the legislature adjourns, they have 90 days to get signatures, 5% of the number of people who voted in the last gubernatorial election, to stop a particular bill from becoming law and put it on the ballot, and then ask people to vote no. And if the voters reject it, then it doesn't become law. Likewise, we can initiate laws and constitutional amendments and take those directly to the people. If the legislature won't act on issues, which does happen, that is one of the ways, things like minimum wage, banning cockfighting, things like that, that the legislature wouldn't address, heritage funds, stuff like that, was taken to the ballot. All right, so let's jump into how a bill becomes a law. And so a lot of bills come from lobbyists. In fact, most bills do, but lobbyists can't introduce bills directly. They do have to have a House or Senate sponsor. one member of the legislature can introduce a bill, or you could have the whole legislature on a bill. There's usually a prime sponsor and then a lot of co-sponsors, but there's also many bills that are introduced just by one person. Bills can be introduced in either house of the legislature. You don't have to have money bills start in the House, for example, like you do in the US Congress. So any issue can be introduced in either house, and you can introduce the same bill in each house and have them go through the process and then just switch one for the other on the final vote. So, and I can talk a little bit more about that later. The Legislative Council, which is a group of lawyers, puts bills in the proper form for legislators. So a lot of times legislators will have an idea, or someone they know does. They'll take it to Legislative Council, tell them what they'd like to do, and then Legislative Council writes it up and puts it in the proper form for our statutes. After a bill is introduced, it gets assigned a number by the clerk and first read, and then assigned to a standing committee by either the House Speaker or the Senate President. This sometimes does not happen until the very end of the session. It's like right now, it's what happens with the Democratic bills. Because they're in the minority, most of their bills don't get assigned to committees until the last day of session, which is, you know, basically the bill has been dead for a long time, and it's just really a formality. After that, it goes to the clerk for printing and posting. Most of the bills are not really, like, not very many copies are printed anymore. Most of it is just posted to the legislature's website. So a bill gets assigned to a committee. The committee chair can decide whether or not to hear the bill. They don't have to, and this is the part of the process where a lot of bills die. So they hear the bill or they don't hear it. They also don't have to take public testimony in these committee hearings, but generally they do. There are very few chairs or very few times they don't take public testimony, but they will sometimes limit it. If there are a lot of people, they'll sometimes say, okay, 3 people on each side of the issue. And so then people who don't know each other are like, how do we decide who should go, right? And then they also will say, okay, you have 1 minute. And I know if you're planning on having 3 minutes and you get 1 minute, it can be frustrating. But you can say a lot in 1 minute. So you should always, if you get your 1 minute, you should take it. If the committee hears the bill and passes it, which does require a majority of those present to do, then the bill goes on to the Rules Committee. And all bills have to go through the Rules Committee, and that is the committee that is supposed to decide if bills are constitutional and in the proper format. A lot of times they don't do that. They will pass things out that are clearly unconstitutional, and they will stop bills just because they want to stop them in that committee. So it's just like with everything in the legislative process, it's very political. If the standing committee defeats a bill, it's dead. And I put for now because there are all kinds of ways to revive bills too, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. These legislative standing committees are a great opportunity for public input. And if you haven't participated and spoken at a legislative committee, I encourage you to do so. I know it looks a little intimidating, but you know, if you decide to do it, there'll be a lot of support for you, including me. I will be there for you. So you can sign up via a request to speak system.
I can check how many points I have on Fridays, but
Oh, you're not on mute. Let me mute you real quick. Okay. You can sign up via the request to speak system, and you can do that like the day of a committee hearing. So say you go down to the legislature and you see, oh my gosh, I didn't know that bill was going to be up. And you want to say something on it, you can sign up that day and you'll probably get an opportunity to speak. So it's pretty cool because in Congress, for example, you have to be invited to testify. But here, you know, can just be an average person and sign up and speak to an issue. And there are a lot of things that I don't like about our legislature, but this is one of the things that I think is pretty awesome. So with these committee hearings, if possible, we encourage people to try to, if there are key bills coming up, to try to talk to legislators ahead of time. You can also send in written comments, and then, as I said, of course, deliver testimony. On this request to speak system, which I'll talk a little bit more about as well, you can also add comments and the legislators will see those. All right, this is just an aside because I want to make sure you're aware of one of the ways that a bill is revived that may have been killed, or the way controversial measures are sometimes introduced in the legislature after the deadlines pass. So there are deadlines for introducing bills. Once those deadlines are passed, you can't introduce a new bill with a new number without, you know, there being special permission. So the way people introduce new bills is they take an existing bill and they amend it, they strike the entire bill and add a brand new bill. And so now you may have had a bill that was about education that's now about water. And it's very confusing to people. I mostly think these are not used in a good way. Sometimes you'll see bills that are introduced that have like a title that says technical corrections. A lot of times those bills are what is called a vehicle, and that means that bill will be used for a strike everything amendment. So Representative Griffin usually has a lot of these, and she'll, you know, towards the end of the time to hear bills, will start offering a bunch of strike everything amendments, and usually fairly controversial issues. So if you see S/E, that's strike everything. If you see the word now in front of a bill title, that means it was the subject of a strike everything amendment. And so you don't want to go in and look at the original bill because it's not going to tell you what the bill is about. You're going to want to look at the bill as it was engrossed, which means, you know, how it came out of one house or the other. Or you can look in the amendments and you'll find a strike everything amendment. Hopefully that's clear. I know it's a really confusing part of the process, which is why I like to make a point of mentioning it. All right, if a bill goes through rules, just checking my time, Rules Committee then refers it to the larger Committee of the Whole, commonly referred to as COW. And Committee of the Whole is the whole body of the legislature. It is before, let's see, I cut that off. Before it goes to Committee of the Whole, usually there's an informal part of the process, the caucuses that consider the bill. And so all the Democrats get together and talk about the bills, and all the Republicans get together and talk about the bills that are going to be coming up. And then after that, they go to Committee of the Whole. The Speaker and Senate President decide the order of bills on Committee of the Whole, and whether, again, a bill is going to go to Committee of the Whole, be heard or not. Committee of the Whole is, again, a session of the entire House or Senate. This is where they debate, add amendments. There are time limits now on how long they can debate. They didn't used to have that, but they've started placing limits on how long they'll spend on a bill, at least in the House. There usually aren't recorded votes in Committee of the Whole unless a bill fails in Committee of the Whole, and then they have to do a recorded vote. All right, and then this is the recorded vote. It's called the third reading, and they use first, second, third reading because before there was a lot of ability to print things, they actually would read them. And there is a reader that does read like the titles and amendments and things like that. You'll hear them on the floor speaking very fast. So the third reading of the bill, this is the recorded vote. There's no debate, but people can explain their vote. And there must be a majority of the entire body for the bill to pass, although some bills require supermajorities. So if there's a new tax or fee, it requires a 2/3 vote. If they're trying to override a veto, that's a 2/3 vote. If it has an emergency clause, for the emergency clause to be in effect, needs a 2/3 vote. And if they try to change something that the voters approved on the ballot, that requires a 3/4 vote. And it must also further the purpose of the ballot measures. So the 3/4 vote alone is not enough with a ballot measure. A bill with an emergency clause, that means it becomes law as soon as the governor signs it. And those bills would not be subject to a voter referendum, like what I talked about earlier. So a lot of times this is the last vote on a bill. So it passes in the House on a third read and goes to the Senate. Unless the Senate changes it, it won't come back. So that'll be the last vote. All right, once it passes on third read, it goes to the other house for a similar process. And if it passes in a different form, then it has to go back to the original house. They can concur on any amendments that were made and just take it to a final vote, or they can say, oh, we don't like those amendments. And then it would go to a conference committee. They would work things out in the conference committee, and then it would go back to each house for a final vote. And I know this is a picture with the old governor on it. I didn't have time to find a photo of the new governor signing a bill that that was in the public domain that I could use. So, and this happened to be a bill signing, the only one I went to when Ducey was governor. So anyway, I just thought I would explain that. So yeah, if the bill passes both houses in the same form, it goes to the governor can sign it, the governor can veto it, and the governor can allow it to become law without their signature. There's no pocket veto. So if they take no action, then the bill becomes a law. During the legislative session, they have 5 days to act, excluding Sundays. And at the end of the session, they have 10 days. So that so there's a limited amount of time before it just becomes law. All right, let's talk about becoming a volunteer lobbyist. There aren't any real stringent qualifications to be a volunteer lobbyist. A passion for the issues, some knowledge of the issue, or willingness to learn about them. So you don't have to be an expert. A lot of times I will hear people say, well, I don't think I know enough. And the thing is, you probably know that it is a problem to try to hinder people's ability to vote. So you know enough to speak on some of these anti-democracy bills. You know that clean, healthy air is important. So, speak up for it. And then, yes, a willingness to speak up as well. So it doesn't always mean you have to testify in a committee, but if you're willing to meet with your own legislators, either one-on-one or as part of a group, as we do on Environmental Day, that's a really important part of the process. So I know a lot of people have anxiety about public speaking, so don't think being a volunteer lobbyist absolutely requires that. We would love if you do, but you can also do more the behind the scenes speaking and writing as well. All right, here's a few do's and don'ts of volunteer lobbying, and these are really common sense things. If you want to get in to meet with your legislator, it's always good to make an appointment, because you don't want to give them an excuse not to meet with you. And so for Environmental Day at the Capitol, we'll have team leaders who are helping to make appointments for everyone. But if you want to meet sometime on your own, try to make an appointment with them. If you get asked a question and you don't know the answer, just say, I don't know. A lot of people, I think, well, I shouldn't say a lot, but some people fall into the trap of thinking they have to have an answer for everything. And the bottom line is sometimes you will get asked questions that just are unfair, beyond what you've looked at. There is no shame in saying, hey, I'll look into it and get back to you. It is bad, I think, to just, try to, to make something up. Let's put it that way. So yeah, be honest, be cordial to the legislator's assistant. They can really help you with getting appointments and providing information. You want to be on time. Tell your story. Say why you care. We all like facts and figures, but one of the things that can be particularly compelling is telling why you care. And then always thank them for the visit and have a good time. Not very many people are doing this. The don'ts are kind of the flip side of the do's. Yeah, don't be angry, hostile, or threatening. Don't be afraid to be assertive, though. So you can be assertive. Some people will interpret someone being assertive with being hostile, but I think that, don't let that intimidate you. Just be speak up for yourself. Generally, good to limit how much material you provide. They're not going to read it all, so bring, a one-page handout if you're going to bring a leaf behind, not a whole stack of information. And then I always encourage people not to put anything on social media that you wouldn't say directly to an elected official. I think that's probably a good rule of thumb about anyone, but anyway, yeah, I just realized I have to change that T to an X. So yeah, because they see it, and it's fine to talk about what they do and their actions, but just, know that they'll see it. So I encourage avoiding name calling and that type of thing. All right, let's talk a little bit about working on a specific bill or trying to stop a bill. First, you want to say, do I need a bill? So a lot of times people will say, I want to fix this. And they think immediately of introducing legislation, but sometimes things can be addressed through changes in rulemaking or other methods. So you don't always need a bill to address, specific issues. You want to start very early. So if you wanted to introduce a bill in this legislative session, this now is a little bit late, actually. You would want to be working on it back in September and October, some people even sooner. And there are a lot of bills that are worked on over multiple years. Of course, know something about the issue and do your homework. If you're trying to pass a bill, you want to find a good, credible sponsor. Right now, I would say the chances for a bill being heard if the person is not in the majority are pretty slim. So if you can, someone in the majority. If there are costs associated with a program, identify those. And that goes for both getting a bill passed and stopping a bill. Know who the allies are on an issue and then try to broaden your coalition. And again, that applies to both stopping and supporting bills. Try to identify who's going to oppose a measure. So if I'm going in to talk to a legislator about a bill we're supporting, I try to tell them before the opposition does who's opposed or likely to be opposed, and talk about what their arguments will be. And I try to address those arguments if I can. Also, you want to talk to any agencies that might be implementing the provisions in your bill. You don't want to get blindsided by them or their opposition. You need to actually ask for bills to be heard. So say you ask someone to sponsor a bill, they may not be paying attention. And so you either need to go to them and say, hey, can you ask the chair to hear this bill? Or ask if it's okay if you go and talk to the chair. There are a lot of deadlines at the legislature you need to keep an eye on. These can help you with killing bills, but also it's easy for your bill to get caught by a deadline too. And you just want to work with the bill all along the process and try to keep track of votes and know where you need to get more votes. And of course, no bill's dead until the legislature adjourns. They can always bring these bills back through various measures. So we never breathe easy until they have adjourned for the session. All right, the legislature's website has a lot of information. I'm not going to go to it live right now, although if there's a little bit of time at the end, I might do that. But there's a lot of information here. You can find the list of legislators, you can find deadlines, all the bills are here, the committee agendas. There is a calendar here. You can even see what events will be at the Capitol that day. For example, if you look at January, you'll see Environmental Day at the Capitol on January 25th. So I encourage people to take a look at what's there. And the other thing is there are live proceedings. So if you click over there, you'll see whatever committees are meeting that day, and you can click on the link and you can watch them from, the comfort of your own home, or, wherever you are, and with a cup of coffee, and you can monitor them that way.
Hungry whiskey.
I just wanted to mention the request to speak system. There is a nice short training that Civic Engagement Beyond Voting has, and I will send that link to you all that goes through this. But basically, the request to speak system is a system you can sign up, and then on any bills that are scheduled to be heard in committee, you can register your support or opposition, put a little comment if you want, and the legislators on that committee will see that information. It is also how you request to speak. So, but it's kind of misnamed because you don't have to speak if you use it. You can say, no, I don't want to speak, and then just submit that information. But even if you accidentally hit yes, and that you wanted to speak, you still don't have to speak. You can say no. I think a lot of, or some people are a little bit intimidated by the name, thinking it automatically means they will have to speak to an issue. So when we do our legislative updates, we have a list of bills we encourage people to sign in support of and in opposition to. And I think that, that helps to let legislators know at least that there's some controversy or that people are interested in the issue. And I'll send a PDF of these slides, but these are just some online resources. We have last year's legislative updates up, and the bill tracker, not last year, from this year, but last session. And then soon we'll be migrating to 2024. We also send out weekly legislative updates during the legislative session. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about those in a minute. Environmental Day at the Capitol is Thursday, January 25th. There's registration at 8:30. It's in Wesley Boland Plaza, which is just to the east of the main Capitol complex. And there's plenty of parking there and a bus stop right there as well. We'll have a program. We'll be meeting with legislators. There'll be groups that'll be tabling. And if you haven't RSVP'd, there's the link. And it's a really fun day and a good way to get to know other advocates and get to know your legislators and a little bit more about the legislative process. Leading up to Environmental Day, we're going to have issue briefing Zooms. The first one is going to be on January 3rd at 6 p.m. And ignore these horribly long URLs. I'll send this all out to you. We're finalizing the details on one on a deeper dive on groundwater and the Groundwater Management Act. We just finalized the details for democracy and voting rights. That'll be on the 17th at 6 p.m. Most of these will be at 6 p.m. There may be one that is at noontime. And then right before Environmental Day, we'll do a briefing on key bills we'll be working on that day on January 22nd. So, and I mentioned these legislative updates. Again, you can sign up for those there. And these updates tell you, you can like take action, like a click and send message to your own legislators. You can see what bills you might want to sign in on for requests to speak. And I always let people know what committee hearings are coming up. So it gives you an opportunity to look and see what committee hearings you might want to monitor that week. And you don't have to be a Sierra Club member to sign up for those legislative updates. Obviously, we love having people as members, but you don't have to be one. All right, and then the session is coming up soon. It always starts on the second Monday in January. This year, that's January 8th. And when it ends, we don't know. They try to limit to 100 days, but this year it went till July 31st. The first day of the session kicks off with a State of the State address by the governor. And she usually outlines her priorities for the session. Some key issues this year is the budget. There's a huge shortfall, 400 million for this year and 400 million for next year. Tax revenues are down, and there's a lot of funding going to vouchers or those ESAs, they refer to them. So that's going to be a big issue. There's not as much money to go around. I saw today the Republicans said, well, you know, maybe they just delay some projects and such, you know, some road projects and such. So I don't know, we'll see what they come up with, but sometimes it's faster in a tough budget year than in a year when there's a lot of money. So we'll see how that falls out. The governor will be coming out with her budget that first week in January as well. So, and then some of the things we think the legislative committees will be dealing with are anti-democracy bills, impeding voting rights, water. There are already a bunch of water bills introduced. And we know that Representative Griffin is also introducing some anti-solar bills. Other probably big issues will be like affordable housing. That didn't get very far last year. We'll see what happens this year. So join us, speak up. Again, you don't have to be an expert, just willing to use your voice and learn a little bit about the issues. And with that, I would be happy to take your questions. And you can either come off mute. Let me stop sharing and I can see everybody. And I don't know if anybody put questions in the chat. I'll look there. Oh, do you have to be over 18? No, you don't. We actually have 3 or 4 high schools that generally participate, and a lot of the students are under 18. We have had middle school participate as well. If you are under 18, and you're not going to be with parent or guardian, we would just need to, get the appropriate forms signed, for permission. But yes, not only is it okay, we welcome you. All right, looks like Christopher has a question.
When you say meet with your representative, I live in a AZ7 where my representatives are very anti-environmental. Do they generally invite or show up?
Excellent question. So again, we try to have team leaders for each legislative district, someone who has done it before, who helps set up the meetings. And in the case of Legislative District 7, they have indeed gotten a meeting with Senator Rogers. So that's already been set up. They don't always. And sometimes they will set up a meeting with you and they'll cancel at the last minute. I've had that happen before. Oh gosh, I'm blanking on her name. She's not in the legislature anymore, but Michelle Ugenti Rita, she kept us waiting for like over a half hour and never showed up. And I'm like, that is not respectful. So I actually encourage people to go ahead and like let her know that. And she was really mad at me, but I mean, seriously, she should have just said, look, I'm not going to make it, and keep us waiting for more than a half hour and then cancel. That was, kind of rude. So
I see. So I suppose my larger question would be then, given especially the overview you just gave, is the Sierra Club or any environmental organization at this point essentially engaged in damage control? I mean, in sense of is very one-sided. The Democrats have no ability to introduce bills that are viable in any way, or very, very rarely, perhaps. And so I guess is it piece by piece or ad hoc, or is there a larger strategy?
Well, part of the strategy is just to get people involved, because a big part of the problem is that, people either not being engaged or not knowing what's going on, and really just, voting without knowing what their legislator was up to, right? So, excuse me. So a big part of it is, just connecting people with the process and with each other. But I mean, a big part of the work we do is stop bad stuff. And it did get easier with Governor Hobbs, because Governor Hobbs has used the veto. But we've been doing that for a while, and, you really have to be able to stop the bad stuff to give some breathing space for some good things to happen. So, the hope is we can stop some of these bills, maybe get a few things through. Like last year, there were some good things that got in the budget, some funding for the Heritage Fund, some funding for Upper Verde State Park, a couple of other things. And also, even though the bills don't get heard, making sure they're in a good form for when there is an opportunity, and then calling attention to the fact that they weren't heard. So, for example, we're working on an environmental justice bill again this session. If it's not heard, we have talked to some of the coalitions working on environmental justice about, doing, a news conference and talking about these issues and making sure that people are aware of the fact that, one, environmental injustice is an issue, and two, the legislature is refusing to address it. So there are a lot of different things that are accomplished by engaging people in the legislative process. If we were doing it just to get a bill passed, in the 2024 session, then you're right, it would be a real tilting at windmills type of thing.
Great, thank you.
Virginia. Oh, you're muted. There you go.
What about the Corporation Commission? Do you do things with them? I see that's an area that is real important that, I'm learning about. So,
yes, and we even have a workshop on it called the ABCs of the ACC, and I'm going to try and get a time set up for that fairly soon. Again, we do that periodically, but it goes through like what the commission is, what they do, and how you can be engaged in it. And happy to
how we can, lobby them, I guess I was thinking.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
little more challenging, but yes. But they do have, what they call open meetings, and most of the time they let people give public comment, but not always.
Okay.
Yeah, it's an important body, and I feel like a lot of people still don't know about it, so. All right, how many people are coming to Environmental Day on the 25th? Yay. Looks like a good group. If you're not, you can still get engaged and sign up for the legislative updates. And if the day itself is a problem and you want to come to the Capitol another day, let me know. I'm happy to show you around, and maybe you can go to a committee hearing with me or something like that. So I know sometimes it doesn't work for people to come on a particular day. And yeah, we're really looking forward to it. I think it'll be a fun day and informative. And then again, we'll have those workshops leading up so you can learn. We're especially focusing on water this year, but we'll be looking at other issues too. So, all right, well, it looks like we're just a couple minutes over, so we stayed pretty well. What else should we do before the day at the Capitol? Definitely check out the workshops, and then we will be sending out information to you as part of your team. So there'll be some reading to do on specific issues. But one other thing you can do is just pay attention, to what's going on, in the news, and they haven't opened the session yet, but they're starting to talk about things. So pay attention to that. Get yourself signed up with the request to speak system. And even if later you decide not to do it, it's good to just have that flexibility. The team leaders will be setting up meetings with each of the legislative teams prior to Environmental Day too. I should have mentioned that. So thanks for asking that question. They'll set up like a planning Zoom with everyone from the district, and they'll talk about like what are we going to focus on, who is going to address what aspects of the issue. We try to encourage everyone to say a little bit. some people are reluctant, but even if all you do is introduce yourself and, just let them know you're a constituent, I think that's important. But hopefully people will take on, and talk about various aspects of the issues that we'll be lobbying on.
Sandy?
Yeah,
Sandy.
Richard. And then
If you had already registered for request to speak in the next, will that carry over into the next session, or do I need to go down there and re-register again for that?
it carries over.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, all you have to do is remember your password. Although if you forget, there's a way to get it
Yeah,
back.
right,
But
okay.
yeah, it carries over.
Okay, the other thing is, are you going to be sending out this slide deck or anything, or did you
Yeah.
record this?
I
You didn't
recorded
record-
it and I
Oh,
will send it
great.
out.
Oh, great, thank you.
Mhm.
Because I couldn't get in with that link, and then I found it. I found your email right about 10 minutes late.
Yes, apologies.
That's okay.
Yeah. Jana.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that for those of you going down on the bus, that last year some of us actually found out who else was from our district on the bus and actually organized who was going to say what on the bus, so that if you don't go to that meeting that's online, there's still an opportunity to find out, how you can use your expertise and what you're passionate about the most for talking to your legislatures. Also,
Yeah,
after
the
you
bus, there's only a bus from Tucson, but there may be carpools from other places, but just
Oh,
to let
okay.
folks know that that's the only location we have a bus right now. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Also, just when you finish talking to people, I'd like to have, like, if you put the slide up for with the governor's picture on it and the one about the corporation commission, because I take pictures of it and it's all in my Google Photos at the same place. So if you can just pop those pictures back up there for a second when everybody's done.
Oh, I was gonna send those slides out. Will those not work or no?
Well, it's just faster for me right now, like if you could pop it, unless that's difficult for you. It's easier to keep them all together. Because I
I see.
share with people.
All right, well, let me see if there are any other questions. I don't want to
Yeah,
keep other people.
sounds good.
You can just
All right, it looks like there aren't. So thank you very much, everyone. If you think of questions later, my email's in the slide deck, but I'm gonna put it in the chat right now too, so you have it. And yeah, happy to answer any follow-up questions. And I think things will start to become clearer and clearer as we get closer and you learn more about the issues. And we may do one more of these workshops too, but it would be fairly repetitive for you. So, all right, yes, thank you all. All right, have a great evening. And Jana, hold on, I will put that back up for you.
Thanks so much. Have a great night.
Thanks. Bye now.